Welcome to episode 190 of thenecronama.com. If you're looking to start your own podcast, you should check out libsyn.com and get up to 2 months of free podcasting service when you use our code NECRO, all caps, NECRO. Libsyn provides you with great customer service and support. They have real-time podcast analytics, free podcast guides and tutorials, and everything else you'll need to get started podcasting today. Go to libsyn.com and enter the promo code NECRO today. And check out the necronama.com wherever you listen to podcasts. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and this is my favorite movie in the entire Michael Myers franchise.
Oh man, I'm gonna stand 10 feet away from you as I guess it's more like 1,500 miles away from you. After that statement, I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of the podcast, and stay drunk, people.
So joining us today, we have Rebecca Cuthbert here. Welcome to the show, Rebecca. You want to go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My first book just came out with Alien Buddha Press. It is a dark poetry collection called In Memory of Exoskeletons. Hopefully the first of many books. I've also got some new stuff coming out. I've got a sonnet that will be in Shakespeare Unleashed by Monstrous Books and Crystal Lake Publishing. Very excited about that. It's called No Rest Nor Relief for You With Me Dead. I've got a story, The Quilting Circle of Bygone Gardens, coming out in Soul Scream Anthologine by Seamus and Nunzio Productions. I've got other stuff coming out. I don't know. Go to my website, RebeccaCuthbert.com, and you'll see all that good stuff.
There you go.
What I published, what I will publish. I'm busy. I've got a novella I'm subbing out right now. It's like a pervy gothic mystery thriller, etc., etc. It's like all the genres blended into one. I'm working on a novel that includes cannibalism. I've got another collection I'm putting together. So got a lot of plates in the air.
That's good.
That's fun.
I don't know about anyone else, but that's just how I have to write. If I'm not working on like 3 to 5 projects at a time, if I try to work on one thing, then the day that it's not working, I'm like, well, that's not working. I guess I'll go play Animal Crossing for 8 hours, and that's not quite true, but it feels that way. But no, so I try to work on multiple things. So like if this one isn't working, I go work on this one. And it's weird because for a lot of times I feel like I'm not making any progress. And then all of a sudden I'm like, look, I finished 5 things this week. And everyone goes, wow, you write so much. And I'm like, So yeah, I don't know how your writing process is, if this is normal for you to have many things in the air.
It is, because if I'm procrastinating from one thing, I can go do another. But I got called out this week because I've kind of been slacking on my novel. And I have this fabulous alpha reader, Chris O'Halloran, and he is like, hey, what's going on with the novel? And I was like, damn it, I've got to. It's like when the people who are just helping you are kind of like asking you what's going on, you need to get off your ass. So
those are also the best people to have, though. So
they are. They really are. And like at this point, he should be pretty much like a co-author because he's shaping so much of it. And I really appreciate it. But I've got a lot of like short stories I'm working on. And then I was like, I got distracted by a poem today. And so like it does happen, but they get finished. Like I have finished things. So it could be worse.
Yeah, you could just like start things and never finish them.
Never finish anything. Like
that's like the first 10 years of my writing things. Right there.
Yeah. I had a story that I finished in like 2022 that I wrote the first time in 2006. So I'm not the fastest writer, I think.
Don, I know you have your your doctorate stuff going on, but like in a normal world where you weren't dealing with that, do you work on several things at once, or do you?
Well, you brought up your least favorite word, James, by saying normal.
Oh, that's true. I do hate that word.
Because I was going to say, well, what is normal? But I would say I have to kind of the same thing as far as the two of you talking about. I have to have a lot of stuff going on, and even I was corrected by one of my committee members, because I said, oh, just if you need somebody in the classroom, I'm here. Put me in. And he's like, no, you should be focusing on your dissertation. And I told him flat out, I was like, I need to have a bunch of things to do, or else I'm not going to get certain things done. Because it makes me force and say, like, oh, I need 5 minutes I can put on this, or here's 2 hours I can put towards this. And he looked at me and was like, no, we're not doing that. So I went home and I'm like, all right, here's an extra project for me to work on. And then a couple of weeks ago, my daughter added a project because she wants to write a horror, kids horror collection together. So I told him, like, that'll be our summer project, because she's been asking me for like a year to write a book. And I want to take advantage of it now while she's interested in actually spending time with me before, those teenage years where we all get, I guess we get annoyed with our parents very easily. But yeah, even when we're going to be working on that this summer, I'm going to have about 3 or 4 other things going on, because I will not be able to produce something. So don't ever, get down on yourself because you're working on all these different things. Like, busy is good. Busy is good. I would so much rather have that than I've got that one project and a lot of time, and then you feel like you can push it off to the next day. Whereas if you're busy, you've got deadlines to meet, you've got, people you have to collaborate with. So it's something that demonstrates that you're not hung out alone. So I just say, look at it as a good thing.
Absolutely.
Or motivating thing also.
Yeah, I like a deadline, like give me those so I can get something done.
Absolutely. I work way better with those. It's the downside of self-publishing so much of my own stuff, though. I've had to literally. You're the only other person I've ever heard say alpha reader, by the way. I have 2 alpha readers.
Well,
Jared
I
and Vanessa.
recently learned, that alpha reader was a thing, and then I was like, oh my God, that's Chris. So.
Yeah, my buddy Jared Sage reads every single draft of everything I write. And I mean, I owe this dude like $200 billion at this point, I think, except I never get paid, so it doesn't work out. Yeah. But just the amount of work that he puts in and the feedback and everything else is just invaluable. And he's amazing. Yep. And if anybody needs some editing done, hit me up. I'll give you Jared's contact info. But yeah, so I suppose we'll go to the movie like we should.
Oh, let's go to the movie.
So, Rebecca, would you like to tell us why you picked this film?
I'm going to tell you why I picked this film. Because I love old stuff and I love to research. And I couldn't resist the title, Season of the Witch. So like that drew me in. But I want to introduce this movie as a potpourri of half-cooked tropes, confusing plot holes, and trippy dream sequences. I want to say it's not good, perhaps, but it's really important. And so everyone should watch it.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah, I came up with that tagline. I was like, this would be better to advertise this than all of the various titles they've come up with.
That was going to be my next question for you. I know you've done a ton of research on this, so feel free to just tell me where I'm wrong and just run with it. But the titles alone are so fascinating to me because I feel like they tell different stories immediately with the title. So you have, is it Jack's Wife? Is that right?
Well,
that's one of the...
we had Hungry Wives, Jack's Wife, yes. Okay. And then, yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember which order it went in. But yeah, like each one just immediately gives me a different feel. Like when you say Jack's Wife, that puts the man first. And I know you're going to get into the pseudo-feminism for lack of a better term at this point. And so I find that title fascinating. Season of the Witch, obviously fantastic title, pulls you in. But I think I said this to you in one of our chats. I was like, it just feels a little rude. It's like, oh, she's a witch. She's, and it doesn't, the title for me doesn't come off as she's going into witchcraft.
Yeah.
It comes off as she's a witch in a bad way. Like she's not fulfilling her role. She's not doing this, I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but that's what I took from it. And then Hungry Wives. Now this is the title I love because this puts the focus on women and it puts something's missing in their lives. And so just these titles for me, the different titles pull me in instantly in different directions.
And I think that it's kind of unique because you don't get a lot of movies where you get this history of titles. So Romero wanted Jack's Wife, which is maybe the most fitting title. But no one wanted the same thing from this movie. So everyone tried to market it differently, but it was all sort of wrong, So Romero wanted Jack's Wife. He wanted like this feminist drama, and marketers were like, no, that's not going to work. We've got to make it sexy. So we're going to call it Hungry Wives, and we're going to sort of release it as this sexy film. But there are like 5 minutes of sexiness in the whole freaking movie, and they're not even that sexy. So that didn't work out so great. So then we've got Season of the Witch, which is what it kind of landed on. But again, like you say, like that's maybe not the best title here, but it's like the different titles show you how no one wanted the same thing from this movie, which is why it wasn't that successful. It's like too many hands in the soup, Mm-hmm. And it was released in 1973, filmed in 1972, all in Pittsburgh. And the budget got chopped by more than half, which is interesting.
Oh, wow.
So originally he started off with $250,000. It got chopped to $100,000, which is why most of the movie was shot in that house. Like that was a real house in Pittsburgh. They did not change much. Like the wallpaper in that house was the wallpaper. They just brought their cameras in, But Romero's like, he's trying to find a distributor. They're like, it's too long. It's too talky. It's too slow. Because they were all excited. They wanted more zombies and stuff. But he's like, no, it's a drama. And it was 130 minutes and it got cut down to 90, which gives you the answer for why it's so weird and jumpy.
Yeah,
because it's like, yeah, we might have gotten context here, but that got cut out. And the original film was lost. Like no one has those cut scenes. So we don't know if this film would have made more sense originally.
Wow. Mm-hmm. I didn't know any of that. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really does explain things because these dream sequences, I don't like the dream sequences. This is hard to say because Greg exists, but the dream sequences were the part I disliked the most.
Okay, but I gotta fight back with you for just a minute.
No, please do.
Because
please do.
I think that those were the only like genuinely scary moments. Like because part of this was, we're going to market this as a horror film. Like that was at least one of its incarnations, And like the dream sequences were the parts that actually made me feel something, like made me worried.
Okay.
Even though they were ridiculous in their own way. I'm going to give you that though.
I think it's the mask for me. I think I'm searching for meaning and I'm searching for like, how does this tie into daily life? And I mean, I can add some context, I'm not an idiot, but like, I felt like the mask is so specific that it should lead to something. And maybe that got lost on the cutting floor. And,
maybe. But it would have been more effective to have like a shadowed face.
Yes,
like just, you know what I mean? Like, don't show us anything. We don't need this like weird ass clown mask. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you there.
And then you could have even, you could have brought the shadow back at the end, which we'll get to, and that would have added up even better. But but I'll back off. I just want to
production values. Like, was it sort of like, oh, that would cost us more somehow to do. Let's fucking put a mask on someone. You know, they just found somebody on the street and they were like, go do this. Because also, like, so many of the actors in this were not big names. Even Jan White, who played Joan, she was like in commercials.
Mm-hmm.
And they pulled her in. So it's like, honestly, that the guy who was in the mask running around, he could have just been like, he could have been someone from food service that they just handed the mask and they said, just run through here.
I mean, I would have gone with any other mask, a pumpkin, a witch, a skeleton, just any kind. Oh,
a classic, like, pantyhose over the face.
Well, then that would have been more, I guess, feminism symbolism or feminist symbolism that
maybe
people would be arguing about for like 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Or in this case, 50 years, because it was 73.
Yep.
Now, I'm thinking about what you said as far as like so much has been left on the cutting room floor and lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
I'm reevaluating what I saw.
It's real. And once you know that and you watch it again, you're like, all right, what context are we missing? Because if he meant for this to be like a quiet, dramatic, slow burn, then speeding it up would naturally weaken the plot and everyone's performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in a lot of those talky bits, that people criticized, in all of these dialogue exchanges, it goes from like 0 to 100. It starts with small talk and then people are like melodramatically screaming and crying. And it's like, where the fuck is the middle of this conversation? And then it's like, oh, it was cut out,
This makes so much more sense.
Yeah, like it just escalates. It's like there is no ramp up. It's just 0 to 100 in these conversations.
But even like how quickly she gives in with the weed conversation. Mm-hmm. Like that makes so much more sense if something else was there, Yeah.
Yeah.
This is making me rethink the entire film already.
But it's like this mystery, because it's like we will never get those 40 minutes back. And there are so many plot holes, and I know we'll get to those, but they just nag at me. Like in the middle of the night, I wake up and I'm like, Nikki, fuck you, Nikki. Nikki's the daughter.
Oh, man, that's great. But yeah, take us wherever you want to go. Rebecca, you're in charge.
All right.
We're just here.
So I want to go back to what this film is and is not, and it's sort of in the middle. Like it is nothing and everything all at once. The 90-minute format is neither here nor there in terms of genre and feminism, because like George Romero wanted this to be feminist, and it's like it sort of is, but I think that Romero did not know that he wasn't like fully a fucking feminist. Like I think his version of feminism was sort of like guys today who think they're woke, but they still talk over women in conversations. So like it's kind of there. And that's why the film is so important, because I think it made way for other films that center feminism and how women's roles are changing and how they're negotiating for different lives, than they've always had. But no one knew what to do with this movie, so everyone's giving it all these descriptors that don't fit. It's not really sexy. Like you all have seen it. There is way too much like creeping dread of mortality to be sexy, because creeping dread of mortality is like the opposite of sexy, The sex scenes are like rated R at best. They show like some naked shoulders. Like they're sexy the way middle school principals think that like girls shouldn't be able to wear tank tops. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, that's not sexy. So, and by the way, Jan White used a body double. She didn't want to be in those nude scenes, even though it wasn't like nudity, by today's standards.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can kind of see where it's like, okay, it's not exactly horror, but it's not exactly drama, but it's not exactly sexy times either. It's something in the middle. It's sort of feminist and sort of not.
Yeah, let's
Oh, I've got too much. I could write a book on this that nobody would read. Some of the film's aspects are feminist, so you're like, okay, and like obviously so. You know, Joan is an unfulfilled housewife, and she spends all of her time dressing up for the outside world, and she stares into mirrors constantly. And I think that while, you know, dissatisfied homemaker is like this trope today, it was even more of a reality back in 73. But also, like, this movie is not exactly about 73. Like, this movie is a commentary on that sort of like suburban 1950s housewife. Mm-hmm. So it's like we got 20 years of women being like this woman or being told they should be this woman before people like, okay, I'm sick of this, you know? So we've got a woman who is dissatisfied. We've got this husband he is abusive. He is absent. Like, he is just a fucker. There is no way Jack ever comes off as being less than a tool throughout the entire movie.
Oh, yeah.
No, not even with his apology, which by that point you're already like, no, fuck you. But the way he delivers an apology is kind of like, hey, by the way, I'm sorry for hitting you the other day. All right, got to go to work. Yeah,
and it's like, it's so late. It's like days after when he bothers to. He's like, now that your black eye is healing, honey, sorry. Yeah, he's the worst. And so you've got Joan like looking for support and companionship in a group of women, but like those women, they vary so much because you've got some of them, like there's a card game scene and you can tell they're all kind of perfectly happy in their roles except for Joan. So she feels like the odd one out. But there's also Shirley, and we just need to put a pin in Shirley for now because Shirley is like her own fucking can of worms, you know? But all of that text, it's like, this is textbook feminism, you know? So it's like, okay, I'm there. And so for a minute, you're like, good job, Romero. But then Joan and her daughter are so sexualized and in ways that are not relevant to the plot that it's really hard to see this film as being like expressly feminist. Do y'all remember that scene where Nikki comes into Joan's room and she just weirdly like tells her mom she's still hot?
Yes.
Like, you still got it, Mom. You look good. And I'm just like, why? Like it's like if those were two college roommates and it was a porn, you would fully expect them to make out. But it's like this mother and daughter's like, what is going on? Like this energy is very weird here. It feels like very crowbarred in. So yeah, and we get that like a few times, you know? So it's like, yeah, like it's feminist to reclaim your sexuality and sort of like have ownership over your own body. But is it feminist to sort of like steal your daughter's boyfriend? And I don't know about that, you know, maybe with witchcraft, maybe with not, as we'll see. But right, like there's a lot here that's like, I don't think that's very feminist. So I found myself sort of cheering and like booing, you know, in different scenes.
The relationship between Joan and Nikki is so fucking weird. Everything about it. Like, even once she's, I guess, missing, like, it just seems like she's always distracted. Like, yeah, my kid's missing, but whatever. Like, everything about this relationship is so weird to me.
It is so weird, but can we talk about the plot hole that is Nikki?
Sure, go for it.
Because
we're going anywhere.
She's not missing, Joan. She is 19 and she packed a bag and she left, which is not missing.
Yep.
Like, not only is she a fully fledged adult, but she packed a bag. There is no evidence of foul play. Yet we have, for some reason, two, not just uniforms, plainclothes detectives working her case. And they have tracked her to Buffalo, which they make it sound like it's, you know what I mean? Like this seedy underground location. And it's like, no, it's just Buffalo. And which is like 3.5 hours away. But they make this big deal of finding Nikki to bring her home. Like there's this interdepartmental, like, I don't know, communication and teamwork to bring home someone who was never missing. Like, no one would have gone looking for Nikki. They'd be like, your kid's 19 and she packed a bag and left. Okay, can't help you, lady. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But we've got 2 detectives who tracked her across state lines. And that's one of the things that bothers me the most about this movie. Because I'm like, that's just easy homework, you know?
Do you think that they're plainclothesmen because uniforms cost money and come out of the budget?
I don't know, but you know what would have been great? Like, what if they had like hot cop uniforms, like they had rented them from Party City or wherever, and they were like shorts, and they came in like that? I would have liked that a lot more. I'm like, okay.
That's
right,
awesome.
Well, let me jump back a little bit. The opening imagery of Joan being, pulled around by a collar and actually in a dog pen and all that. You then realize, okay, well, now she's talking to her therapist, and the therapist has this question, or excuse me, asks this question, what are dreams? And points out that the person who can analyze the dream best is not the person who dreamt it.
Oh my God, which is such mansplaining. It's like, let me tell you how you feel. And he's even like spreading out, he's doing like the man spread. And he's like, the only one holding Joni back is Joni. And like, he even like, it's like, why are you using this little babyish nickname with your client, just to make her seem more childish?
Well, I think it was not until 72 or 73 where women could actually have a bank card or credit card in their name while married, as opposed to they have to have the husband's information and cards and stuff like that. So, I mean, in that sense, it is that whole, my wife is still a child, or at least less than I am.
Yeah.
And her status doesn't matter as much as an adult male, especially an adult married male.
Yep.
Which, I don't know, like when I look at stuff like this through the historic lens, I'm thinking about the mood of that time. So at least in this sense, Romero gives us the conversations, the way in which people would, I guess, code switch in a way, as far as like who they're talking to, so they have a better impression or have this idea of presentation of superiority. So I think this was, something as ridiculous it was and how infuriating it is. You look at it and you're like, people were actually talked to like that on a regular basis. Now it happens, but you don't hear about it as much. I'm sorry, people aren't. They're definitely going to notice it and bring it up if it is, if you do address them in a certain way, as they should. But it's come out of, I should never even say it was in fashion, but it's come out of fashion to where you don't address someone like that, regardless of gender or gender identity. And
I mean, you bring up the psychiatrist because there's like this whole gaslighting angle where she's got this medication. We see scenes of her not wanting to take it. She spits one out, or flushes it down the toilet or something. And then her husband, is that, I don't know, I lost count of how many times Jack told Joan to go to sleep. He is constantly go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, right? And it's symbolic, and it's sort of ham-fistedly symbolic, right? But like, stop being aware, stop thinking about what your life is and could be, just go back to sleep and behave like I want you to behave. So we get that, and it becomes like a mad woman in the attic figure because she's always retreating to her bedroom. So in that way, it's very cool. And we've got a ton of the Gothic in this, which is like a whole other, that's a page in my notes. So.
Oh, this was the note with the dream and psychiatrist and everything. And as you brought up the gaslighting, something that made me think as far as the dreams that we continue to see and the way that she's interacting with people. I wrote down comparison to reality as far as that statement the doctor made about, being able to analyze what's going on. So for me, it starts to give you the presentation as an audience member watching this, where we now, or at least for me, I'm questioning the reality of what she's seeing, or at least what we're seeing on screen with her, and what might have been said to her and things like that. And unironically fell into that same trap that the doctor had set, as far as, I'm going to distort reality for you as the character, and as the creator, Romero, I'm going to distort your view because you may question if this is actually real because of the way the doctor said it to her, as if she had a history of mental illness, or she had been previously treated. So you then start questioning his motivation of saying it that way, or addressing her in that manner.
Yeah, I mean, you get vibes of like the yellow wallpaper here for sure too, because we never are told. And again, is it on the cutting room floor, right? Like that cutting room floor that then I guess got burned. What was she diagnosed with, right? Like, was she depressed and so she went to the doctor, or was it more than that? We don't really know, and we kind of get hints that it might be more than less. Again, toward the end with that demon scene with Greg, where he finally is afraid of her. So I think that we definitely get this on purpose, and I think it's related to the wallpaper, which is now maybe making you question me. But the patterns, the visual patterns of the furniture and the clothing and the wallpaper, like to some degree, you could say, well, it was the fashion of the time, But it is so Arabesque, and it's like reminiscent of the 19th century, like that wallpaper. And we get all of these like wild shapes and patterns, and we get all of this dream scenery that we don't know exactly where dreams and reality separate. And we get the sense that Joan doesn't either. And that is well done.
Yeah, absolutely. I have so many questions for you, and I would love to have your notes in front of me so I could just go through and be like, oh, what about this? But I guess my big thing that I keep getting hung up about with this, I keep coming back to you talking about how it got chopped up and all these people had different visions. And as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I literally feel like, and I feel like I'm going away from what you just said, I'm sorry, but I feel like they even had different visions for each character.
Oh, yeah.
And the more I'm thinking about it, the more this movie makes sense to me. Like I'm thinking, oh, this is why Greg's kind of funny here, but then the rest of the time he's a horrible douchebag tool.
Yes.
And then this, and like just these different people. But then I was thinking about her husband, and I was like, this is like the one guy that they knew what they were doing. They were like, oh, he's always a horrible asshole, and But no, I just really wanted to say how much this has fucked with me that you brought this up, and now I'm literally just sitting here like rewatching it in my head and analyzing it.
Because I want you to live it with me. I want you to live the nightmare with me.
I'm just gonna start waking up at 3 a.m, and I'm gonna be like, she did this to me.
Yep.
But it's okay.
There was a great quote that I wrote down from Keith Phipps, who analyzed the film. And he said that the actors have a widely varying skill, which kind of made me laugh because, it's like you see some of these actors and you're like, I think this is your first day on the job, and then some of the others do such a great job. Like, I don't know. I think it might have been Nikki's first day.
Yeah,
it was Greg's third,
He didn't know they were filming during the weed scene. He was just talking to the other actresses.
One of the mysteries that I couldn't find, because I looked, like I spent time on this, and I could not find which actor was supposed to be Larry, which was Shirley's husband. Okay. Remember there's that party scene, and some guy gets up and he reads like his dirty little Mad Libs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We don't know if that's Larry or not. So I was like, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to look up which actor played Larry, and then I'll see a picture and I'll know if that was Larry. But like, whoever played Larry never appeared again, And like, some of these actors were really hard to find because they didn't do much. I mean, even maybe the word actor, maybe that's not what they would use to define themselves. So,
but even like you and I have talked a bit about like the ages of everybody, because
Oh,
I
God.
thought Greg was like in his 40s, you know.
Greg is 36. I looked it up because I was like, come on, Greg. The actor who played Greg at the time, I have a whole freaking section on Greg. Greg, bold script, Greg. He's supposed to be some kind of adjunct professor, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I said he is trollish and unattractive, and I put that in bold. And he was apparently 36. His name is Raymond Lane, the actor. And he looks 45, but he was apparently 36 at the time. I can't find out how old Jan White was at the time, the actor who played Joan. I can't.
Yeah, that's where I was originally going to go.
It doesn't exist online. It says she was born in Pennsylvania, but it's like she just got dropped by the stork someday because there is no birthday.
I found like a range. It was like, oh, she was born between these years. And I was like, how did you narrow that down? Like,
yeah, I found that she made her debut in 1953. And I'm like, well, what the hell does that mean? Like, was she a kid in a commercial? Right? Or no one knows. No one knows. But she's supposed to be. Now I'm back to Joan, the character. Joan is supposed to be like 39, 40. But she keeps calling Greg like kid. You know, like there are all these like really obvious cues that we're supposed to believe that he's young. And it's like, I'm not buying it because I can see his face.
His hair looks gray in some scenes. I was like, how old is this person?
Well,
like, you should be mad that he was banging your 19-year-old because I don't know about this guy. And if he's been grooming her for a couple of years, he needs to go to jail.
Oh my gosh, I have a whole theory. I went down a rabbit hole and I might be so wrong. But again, it's what happens with research, right? Like you find a thread, you follow it, you keep pulling. So I started looking up Vietnam War stats because in my mind, the only reason Nikki could have had for taking up with Greg is that there was just nobody else. That's my theory.
Damn.
Yeah.
You went deep.
I went so deep.
That's not a rabbit
numbers, hole. Like, I've got numbers. You all can edit this out. You probably should. Over 58,000 young American men were killed. 75,000 were severely disabled. 23,214 were 100% disabled. Over 5,000 lost limbs. 2,000 went missing, most of whom are still missing. Of those killed, 61% were younger than 21. Wow. So if we kind of just look at the enormity of those numbers and remember that the population was a lot smaller, like if you were a young lady who wanted to have sex with a dude, was it the Gregs of the world who were left? Like maybe.
This actually explains a lot about the 80s and the confidence that mediocre white men started having.
Absolutely. Because, you know, again, history, research, fun stuff. The U.S. didn't sign the Paris Peace Accords until 73, Fall of Saigon, 75. So that conflict was raging when this film was made. So that it, like, maybe that's assuming too much, but that is the only excuse I could come up with for Greg. Because if you're trying to, and he kept calling her Mrs. Robinson, and it's like, Greg, we get it. Or like Romero, we get it. Like you're trying to make him seem young and hot. It's not working. He is not a pool boy. He can't pass for one, you know? So I don't know why they didn't try harder to get a hot young thing if he was supposed to be so tempting to both mother and daughter.
Yeah, right?
I don't buy it.
So while we're on this topic, I want to skip ahead and spoil the hell out of the main event here. But so here's my issue. This whole witchcraft thing that takes place where she forces Greg to come to her that night. Yeah. There's a scene earlier where he's basically says, hey, if you want to fuck, all you got to do is say so.
Yep.
I don't feel like there was any witchcraft necessary. I don't know what's going on with this. Like, just call the guy and say, hey baby, come on over. You know, so I just wanted to get your feelings on.
Oh God, she
what
waited
the hell
5
is
minutes.
this?
She's like, and P.S. Let's say you've got witchy powers. If I had witchy powers, I would be using them to like destroy the patriarchy. I wouldn't be like making some little Gilligan's Island troll like come to me, you know? So she apparently does a little spell for him. She waits like 5 minutes and then just calls him. And then later on, she's like, I did that. I called you to me. I did it with my witchcraft. And it's like, but he already like said he would get down with you whenever you wanted. So yeah.
If this earlier scene had been him being like, look, you're not my type. I don't like older women. Whatever.
I don't like women who are 4 years older than me. Sorry.
This guy seems like he doesn't like women who are 4 years younger than him even. Yeah. So, but like he's the kind of TA that his Tinder profile is like you have to be 18 to 19, and so like this whole thing seems off to me. So if the earlier scene had been you're not my type, blah 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 blah, but no, he's very openly, hey, let's do this. Yeah. Just say you want it. And so it doesn't make any sense to me, but I love it.
And I hate to agree with anything Greg says. So I say this with like vomit halfway up my throat. But Greg says at some point, no, you just want, I'm paraphrasing, because I refuse to use the word he uses, which is bawling, but he says ballin'. But anyway. So he's like, you wanted to have sex with me and you wouldn't allow yourself, like you would not give yourself permission. You had to say that it was super. It's like, James, I'm going to bring up Catholics. The devil made me do it, right? Like that Joan would not give herself permission to have sex with some dude unless there was something supernatural about it. So... And he tries to make that point again and again with the weed moment with Shirley, that it's all the power of suggestion. And, that all of this is sort of Joan not being strong enough or brave enough or, free enough to make her own decisions. She still has to pretend that it's someone else making the decision for her.
Yeah.
Maybe, but also fuck you, Greg. I still hate Greg.
I wrote down in my notes, Dad/husband of the year, eye rolling emoji. Mm-hmm. Because the inclusion of him, it allows for two things. More than two things. We're seeing the middle class, even upper middle class, that single income household reflected a few times, whether it's with their family or the other women that were at the card game. Mm-hmm. And I was looking up some figures because I'm like, all right, you got your numbers. I got mine ready just in case we get to that.
I love numbers. Give them to us.
Where it's civilian labor force by sex, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. From 1970, it was at 38%, and that was a jump from 1960, where it was around 22%, and then just about 50 years earlier, 8 to 9%. So you're 38, then 42 in 80, and then 46 in 1990, 47, and then and it kind of flattens out. As far as women making up 47% of the workforce, as opposed to you might be a quarter, maybe a third. And then married versus single women. So 1920, you're talking about, again, 9-10%. But the married numbers skyrocket in the 60s. So you're talking about 40% of women who were married were employed. Whereas single women, that same time period of 1920 to about 1970, you're talking about for married, I'm looking at the wrong chart. Sorry, for single women, you're looking at 65% starting off in 1920, and they end up about 72, 73 in 1970. So you see this drastic difference between married female workers and unmarried or single women in the workforce. So you're looking at really the change as far as economic needs for a family, whereas you could have someone that is going to sustain this family with one income. Mm-hmm. But you don't have that option if you're not, that living that suburban lifestyle, the Levitt towns and all that, where you can, because things are much more affordable, because you've got a husband who is, even if you were working the same job, he's probably going to be getting about 2 to 3 times what your pay was, to account for the fact that he has to take care of a family. And I mean, it's just really interesting to see about all the changes that took place with regard to gender within the workforce, as well as those who, decide to stay at home or have the ability to stay at home. Because from that period of the women's rights movement at the late 1960s to 1975 with the International Women's Year, all the way up to movies like 9 to 5 are reflecting those changing viewpoints about whether or not a woman could work, but then it's combining the fact that the economy is now dictating that you're going to have a two income household to survive and thrive. Yeah. But all the social attitudes that came with that got completely annihilated. The war on things like baby formula and daycare by religious conservatives or I just say conservatives in general, that thought that having baby formula available as well as having daycare services was going to harm the family in some way, and lead to a lot of problematic kids in the 1980s. So, I mean, there's a lot going on. Like you brought up earlier, Rebecca, this whole idea of there's some feminism here. There's some assumptions of what feminism is, but then you also have that backdrop of what's changing historically, economically, and politically, to where you can really appreciate all the different ways in which you can look at feminism or the changes within feminism, the expansion of it, that some people may not have been looking at, as far as looking at the whole, this is what it means for a woman to be free. Hi, I'm a guy. I'm going to make up the definition. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they say. I'm a man. My opinions are valid.
and I think that is sort of, in a way, and maybe he didn't know. I kind of have a feeling that Romero didn't know what he was getting right and what he was not getting right in this. Like, he sort of had a shadowy idea, and he just sort of hit on some things. And one of the things that I do think he did well was he understood the climate. There are all of these things that were going on that are just barely alluded to, like Roe v. Wade. Mm-hmm. So all, that sort of debate was raging for years before the decision came down in 73. And there's this really awkward,
yes.
I keep using the word crowbar, this crowbar moment where Joan asks Greg if Nikki ran away because she was pregnant. And there is no evidence. There is nothing to suggest that Nikki was pregnant. There's nothing to suggest that Nikki would have known she was pregnant because she ran away like 2 days after having sex with Greg. And it's like, biology doesn't work that way. But, you kind of wonder, okay, was he sort of trying to maybe hint that Nikki ran away to get an abortion? But again, was that something left on the cutting room floor? I don't know. But Greg answers really quickly. And he says, no, there's no way. So he kind of maybe is hinting at some form of birth control.
Right. Because he even gives the number. He says, oh, go ahead.
No, just that, right? Like those are all these, like, they're very shadowy maybes. with those illusions.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Don was going to say more.
Oh no,
stuff.
no. It was I was just going to say, this whole idea. He throws in a percentage. He smugly throws in a percentage that I'm like 90%, 96% sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately, it caught me off guard. And then I went back and I was thinking like, oh my God, I remember middle school health class and changes. And we went over the pregnancy rates with various prophylactic devices, which I don't know. It's you're right. This is a weird thing to throw in because again, we kind of question whether it was something on its own or if this was something that was part of that bigger narrative that got cut.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, it's weird.
It is weird. There's so much in this that's like, I don't know which way this is trying to go, but it is weird.
It's just like, I don't know. It feels so, forced, obviously, but also just, I can't imagine having this conversation with Greg if I'm in her position. Like, it's one thing to, if this was somebody who was a very different person, I could see it. My problem is just Greg. This does not seem like the kind of person you ask this question to.
No,
I don't see any situation where it goes okay.
No, Greg never made any comment about like, hang on, let me get a condom. I do not want to get you pregnant when he was having sex with Joan all those times, Yeah. So it's like, do we just assume he was more careful with Nikki? Do we assume that he assumed that Joan was already going through menopause and was therefore incapable of getting pregnant? Like,
you've got to be at least 32. You're way too old.
Yeah. You have
seems
graduated.
Like something Greg would think.
Yeah, you're above the age of a college student, so I'm going to assume that you've gone through menopause. But
married people can't get pregnant.
Greg, fucking Greg.
Please don't get your sex advice from my jokes. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, because I hear that you can't get pregnant if you do it in a church.
Honestly, like, if you're dating a Greg, I'm just preaching abstinence to you right now.
Right?
Like, just don't. So we don't, and it may, if Nikki had run off to get an abortion, does it maybe make more sense how much they were worried? But even then, it is not a police matter, not an interdepartmental, all of this cooperation between the we're in Pittsburgh and Buffalo police departments. So the whole Nikki thing is just so freaking weird. But before we leave off of Nikki, is it Nikki's face that is on the cover for this movie? Because it is not Joan's. Like, if you look up, if you just Google it, it's like, is that Nikki? And why is it
pulling
Nikki?
it up to look?
It's not Joan. It looks like it
definitely looks like Nikki.
Why the fuck is it Nikki? Nikki had like 5 minutes of screen time in this movie. It doesn't make any sense, right? And then it's almost like
I thought it was weird that it wasn't Joan, but I didn't even connect that it could be Nikki.
It makes no sense. And then it's almost like, well, wait, I thought you were all against ageism and stuff. So why doesn't Joan get to be on the cover of like her own movie? I don't know. It's weird.
A really weird poster. It says Happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock, and there's 3 kids in masks. Oh, wait, no, that's the other movie again. Sorry.
Jesus. Like, wait a second.
I love that it came up, so I had to say it anyway. But no, I never even connected that could be Nikki, and now I'm more confused than ever.
Right? It's like you think you pin down something in this movie, and then it wiggles out from under your finger. So
it's all so weird. Yeah,
it's all so weird, and it's great as a suburban gothic, when you look at it that way, and it's interesting in so many ways. And just, we got to talk about Shirley. We got to talk about Marion. Like, what the fuck is going on with these characters? I'm going back to Shirley, because Shirley is one of them that haunts my dreams. So Shirley gives this the actor who plays Shirley gives this fabulously like grotesque performance when they're all hanging out in the living room, when Greg and Nikki are there and they're smoking, and Shirley seems to be just wasted. There's this moment when I think that she just starts chugging vodka or gin. Like it looks like a water glass. You know, she has this huge water glass of some clear liquid that is probably booze. And instead of just like dumping some of it into this fancy little glass, she like puts down the fancy glass and just starts chugging it from the large glass. And it made me think, if you all remember those cartoons where, you know, a character would cut a slice of cake and then he would take the whole cake and leave the slice. So we get like this tiny moment of comedy, sort of. But then Greg starts teasing her. And James, as you said earlier, we have no idea why Joan allows this, because she seems against it, but then just lets it happen.
Yeah. And
then gets really mad about it. And it's like, well, why didn't you stop? You could have stopped this at any point. And then Shirley is whiplashing between laughing and sobbing. It's like one moment she's yelling and she's weeping, or she'll throw herself at Greg in this like kind of sexy way. But then a second later, she's clinging to him like she's like this little child and he's some figure of authority. And I love that scene. It freaks me out, but I love that scene because it's not just her face. Her face is really interesting in that scene. Like her face is grotesque with the way it keeps twisting, and her mouth looks so huge. Like her teeth look huge and her mouth looks huge. It's really like out of proportion and exaggerated. And then she goes home and we do not see her again, which, you know, she's such a sort of an important character up until that point. She says something about not wanting to be at home alone with her husband. Mm-hmm. She says, if you're there, she's trying to get Joan to come with her. She's like, if you're there, he won't be all over me. But we do not know if the all over her is in a sexual way that she doesn't want, or if it's like violence. So Joan takes her home. Joan just drops her off. They get into a fight on the way home. Shirley gets out of the car, falls down, and then her husband, whose name is apparently Larry, is just sort of lurking in the background as a shadow, like this threatening shadow. And I think that's interesting, right? And like, of course, that's feminist, that in both cases, she doesn't want her husband to touch her, you know, whether it's in violence or unwanted sex. And that idea of being sexualized, being just fucking exhausting, like we get that from Shirley, like trying to be sexy, but not really always wanting to be sexy, but feeling like she should be sexy. That morning of her earlier life. And then in that scene with Greg, she's screaming that she's not done yet. And so all of that is feminist, and it's sort of awesome, but it's also kind of scary and weird. And of course, there are things in that scene that just aren't explained at all. And that's
so
when Joan gets home. That's when Joan gets home because she was going to stay the night. So that's when Nikki and Greg just feel free to bang. And then she gets home and hears them. And then we have that real uncomfortable scene. Everybody should watch the movie just for that uncomfortable scene.
It's a very odd scene.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this theory that Greg's whole thing with the marijuana was about pushing everyone's boundaries, right? Like that's what he's saying he's doing to her friend. Yeah. But I feel like it's really already about Joan. I think it's, will you push your boundaries? Will you do this thing you're not comfortable with? And I don't even know so much that she was a target for him at that point, so much as I feel like he does this to every woman he interacts with in hopes that something will work, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I want this scene to be longer and more involved, because I want to literally see her fight with this in herself. And I think that would have really helped me with the end as well. I think everything she does, if I would have seen some level of grasping for what she should do and the uncomfortableness of making this decision, I think this would be so much stronger. We'd have a literal like snowball going on of these little decisions she's making and how it grows to make her make these other decisions. And I think that's why I'm so angry about this weed scene, as I call it. So
yeah. And is that one of the scenes that we're missing the middle of? You know, like
yeah, exactly.
It very much is like they're kind of talking, and then we go from 0 to 100. And with Greg, oh God, I feel like I'm just developing like an even stronger like hatred for Greg. Greg is like this weird, like I called him new sexist, whereas Joan's husband is old sexist. But like he thinks he's, you know what? Like he thinks he's like new age. He thinks he's 1973's woke, you know, but he's still such an asshole to all of these women. Mm-hmm. But he thinks, you know, that he's, I think that he thinks he's like liberating Joan, you know?
Oh, totally.
He's like opening her mind.
Yeah, I totally get the feeling like he doesn't feel like he's using this as a tool to get to women. He feels like he literally believes it about himself. And there's a real line between those two things. And yeah, he definitely strikes me as I'm helping you instead of I'm targeting you, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, totally.
And so back on Greg, I feel like Greg is, his name is getting too much time in my mouth, but that scene toward the end that is also like another just huge plot hole, like one of those things where it's like we are missing a scene here because none of this makes any sense. She has that scene where she's like, I'm scared, come over, Greg, I'm scared. And she's like crying and she gets all hysterical, and I use that word knowing the history of the word hysterical. Yeah. She is clinging to him and kind of screaming and crying, and she never tells us what she's scared of. Like, we don't know. Is she scared that she does believe this stuff? Is she scared because she thinks she has a power that she now doesn't know how to control? Is she scared because she had an affair and doesn't know how that affects her identity? We don't know any of that. She just kind of says out of nowhere that she needs to summon a demon. Just that, I got to summon this demon and I'm scared. Maybe, and we never know why.
I mean, if this had been earlier, then summoning the demon might just be calling Greg.
Right. Although Greg is not cool enough to be a demon. He'd be like
That's true.
He'd be in service of some demon who told him what to do.
He'd be a cat. They think they're demons.
Oh my God, we got to talk about the fucking cat too. So Greg's, you know, that's when he's like, you're just giving yourself an excuse to have sex, you know? You're giving yourself an excuse to enjoy sex. And she's screaming that she's got to summon a demon. By the way, this is like the third time she's done witchcraft. She does witchcraft, and you can't see my finger quotes, but I'm going to say does witchcraft. And she sort of calls Greg to her, you know, and then she does whatever little ceremony that is pretty unexplained on Ash Wednesday. And she apparently calls a demon. We don't know why. That's 0 to 62. It's like, if it were my third day as a witch, I would not be trying to call a demon. But I guess Joan is more ambitious.
Well, that is something you have to warm up to, you know.
Right. There was not much of a ramp up. So it's like, what's missing here? You know what's missing is a montage. We need a montage of like Joan mastering her witchiness, like in the Karate Kid.
Yeah.
And then everything would make so much more sense.
That ended up on the cutting room floor. So.
It did, which is really too bad because I love me a montage.
That's actually why you can't find out her age in real life, because she practiced so much that she became a real witch, and now she's immortal.
Yeah, eternal youth and beauty. Good for you, Joan. Way to get it. But she has sex with Greg, and like weirdly, it seems like she doesn't really want to, because as soon as they're done, she's like, "Ugh, this is the last time. Go away." We don't get an answer to whether or not her spell worked. Like, we do not know if the demon showed up or not. Except, and here's where we get that weird ass cat. Right after she calls the demon, which I don't know, it seems like having sex with Greg is necessary to call the demon, because she's like, it takes two people to do this, but then Greg does nothing but have sex with her. Like, he doesn't participate in any way. He actually falls asleep, you know?
You're right.
And so then
At least steal his blood or something.
Yes, like cut into him, you know, draw a symbol on his chest with a knife, something.
Yeah.
Nothing. We get nothing. But then we get cut to a scene in the basement where a black and white cat sneaks through an open basement window. We have no context for this cat. And I'm like, is the cat a demon? Is the cat the demon? Right? Like, she summoned a demon and a cat shows up. The juxtaposition would suggest a connection. But the cat just kind of walks around and then we don't see any more of the cat. Is it a pet cat? Right? Like, is there a scene, or was there a scene in which Joan was like talking to her pet cat and then it got cut? Like, was this just a pet coming home? But if so, why all the mystique of this cat, you know, coming in the door after the spell? And it's not even like a black cat. It's just this white and black cat just coming in. And I was like, that's fucking weird, because this is a woman who keeps having nightmares of violent home invasions.
Yeah.
But she's leaving her basement windows open? Like, girl, lock the doors. Like, you're not even trying hard, you know?
It's so strange. Maybe when she summoned the demon, that's how her husband got to come home early.
Well, and that's an option, right? Like, did she summon a demon? The demon showed up, whether the cat represented the demon or not. And was it another one of those cases of like, the devil made me do it? Like, she had summoned the demon and then after that kills her husband, right?
Ooh.
Maybe. And then, as Greg would say it was just her giving herself an excuse to shoot her husband.
I thought that would be kind of great if that was purposeful.
Yeah.
She was like, oh, there he is, Pop, you know, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have any answers. This movie does not provide answers to anything. All it gives us is questions upon questions, which proves that it's a horror movie, I might add.
I guess. And like, in a way, if I'm being generous to this movie, and sometimes I'm in the mood to be generous to the movie, you know, all of the nonsensical running around with their head cut off, like, directions of this narrative, like, it sort of does represent the swirling cultural backdrop of the day, you know? And again, I'm going to go back to that wallpaper, you know, and the dreamscapes and all this stuff. I had a student, and their name was Pluto. And I'll never forget this line, because I was like, man, I'm the teacher, and I couldn't explain it this well. And they said, the arabesque is too much on purpose. And I feel like that kind of describes the film too. Like, this is too much on purpose. It throws so much at you to grapple with, and it doesn't give you time to figure anything out before it's throwing more at you. And maybe
and it's coming from multiple directions, so none of it makes any sense.
It's coming from Joan, it's coming from Greg, it's coming from Shirley. We get, can we talk about the suburban Gothic? How long do we have? Cut me off anytime.
You're the one that might have to leave, so we have. This could be a 6-hour episode. I'm all right.
No, cut out all my awkwardness later. So,
oh boy, I don't want to edit anything. I'm not cutting anything. Too bad. You made your choices. I did my research into the suburban Gothic, and I'm thinking about all the ways that this is kind of classically Gothic, which was pretty cool, because we get the gender and the class anxiety that's always been a part of the Gothic. And we get a lot of those aesthetics that I'm going to call sort of indulgent,
because I love the Gothic, and I love it because it's sort of decadent and like delicious, you know, like it's like a plate of desserts. And so we get that, but we get it's updated, but we've got the vulnerable woman. She's mostly home alone in this big, dark, creepy house because we get a lot of shots of the house at night. We do not get portraits, but we get a replacement for portraits in those creepy ass lamps that we keep seeing. We keep getting these close-ups on these two creepy lamps. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? It's like a statue of a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
So we get that a lot. And we also get close-ups on that bull statue in their bedroom.
Yeah.
And the shadow of the bull statue. The shadow of the bull statue, of course, makes it just look like sort of a devil shadow.
Yeah.
But even the bull itself, you know, it's got like interesting mythology because a bull represents like masculine power and strength. But also, when you wanted to sacrifice something, you sacrificed a bull, you know? So interesting sort of take on the patriarchy, right? Like, is it that strong if it's the first thing that's got to go? So we've got these close-ups on these like statues instead of portraits, but I would argue that they work in the same way. We've got mirrors everywhere. Like from the minute the film opens, Joan is constantly faced with her own image. You know, she pictures herself as old. She's got the magnifying mirrors on her makeup stand. There's the mirror in the hallway. There's the huge mirror in the bedroom, the mirror in the bathroom. And then we've got all of those like dizzying clothing and wallpaper patterns. We get the mad woman in the attic. Like it's Bertha from Jane Eyre, you know? We've got a tyrannical male presence. We even have like the superstitious villagers in the form of Joan's dumb friends talking about Mary. You know?
I love that. That's amazing.
For James, we get Catholicism and its hypocrisy thrown in.
Well,
not
as it should always be.
Yes. As it should, which is not just a Gothic feature, but points out how close those like ritualistic religions are, right? Because half of Catholicism is just chanting and waving smoke around, I think.
It feels
at least when I was in.
Right? And so we get that scene when Joan is actually performing witchcraft and then her husband comes home and I love that scene where she takes ashes from the fireplace and puts them on her head to make him think she's gone to church, but she's been doing her own version of religion, you know? And I think it's pointing out that it's like that jump from Catholicism to witchcraft is more of a hop. It's a little hop. Incense, chanting, your special little cups, you know? It's there in both of them. And so I really enjoyed that. But then in that scene, we get another weird use of her powers, maybe. Do you remember when she made the teapot rattle? Mm-hmm. She was real mad at her husband and the teapot shakes. And that might be the only, I'm going to say proof, but maybe not proof, you know, but it's sort of the only visual proof we get of her power in the whole movie is that shaking teapot.
Well, and I couldn't decide because we see so many of her visions and dreams and stuff. I couldn't decide if this was even really happening.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, we question her. And I think, you know, whether Romero meant for us to do that or not, you know, if he did, it's pretty artful that we're sort of gaslighting her too. You know, we don't trust her. We don't know what she thinks is real and what is not. And then we get Marion, who is interestingly not that tropey. She was sort of a piece that didn't fit. And I liked that. I found that interesting. But again, not sure if that was on purpose or if they just sort of grabbed a woman off the street to play Marion. I didn't actually research Marion, I will admit. She's not.
Yeah, I didn't either.
No, she's not a sexy maiden witch. You know what I mean? Like she's not sexy young witch, but she's not old crone witch either. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. She is very much like, I'm middle-aged, I'm middle class, I wear turtlenecks, I'm not super hot nor unattractive. I'm just taking everything in the middle as it goes. And she talked about witchcraft really casually, and we get that sort of 1970s like self-help, make up your own religion thing that was going on. And Marion even alludes to that, in this day, anything goes, we can do whatever we want. But then in the end, it seems like they're cramming in an attempt to sexualize Marion when they really haven't done that the whole movie. So it does not work well. We get that odd scene at the end when Joan is getting initiated, and it's sort of it parallels in some way to the opening scenes with the dream sequence with being led around by her husband on a leash.
Yeah.
And now we've got her on a different leash. She's wearing a different collar. She's being, led around by a different person, but she's naked and she is totally subjugated. And so, again, you can say this is feminist, this is not feminist, because maybe it's the choice that is feminist, right? That we can choose who we bow down to and who we don't, who we become vulnerable in front of and who we don't. But you also could say, well, is Joan trading one leash for another leash? Her husband was her master, but now she's joining this witch coven where there's clearly a leader, and she's the new kid there, and really has no say. So I think that's kind of left just open to however you interpret that.
And I couldn't tell if this was supposed to be a positive or negative thing. Like, like everything you're saying, like that's exactly where I was. I was like, are they saying that, if you find freedom, you'll just find another master, so you might as well stay here?
Yes.
Or is it like that's just part of life? Like, was it that she made a choice? Like, I could not tell. And maybe this goes back to too many people trying to control the narrative. And maybe it's just, exactly what it looks like. I don't know. But it just left me in such a weird place.
Super artful. Like, did it mean to leave us in a weird place? Did it mean to make us question the entire movement of the 70s? There's definitely a thread running throughout the movie, and it's on purpose, but is it all on purpose that women are scary and their sexuality is scary? And if we give them control of their own lives, what are they going to do with it? They're going to kill us. They're going to take everything, like the police talked about in the end after she killed her husband.
Oh, man.
Women will take everything. They get everything. Yeah. We're going to say it's an accidental death. Nothing else we can do. We can't prove it, So there's this fear of women.
And you see that change, whether we're talking about the progressive era and the idea of the new woman, that she's going to go to school, she's going to get married later, all those things. You see those perceptions about women change as well. And but you still see them to this day where, if a woman does something or is accused of something or whatever, and I'll just say men are the ones that are going to jump on them and complain about how, women shouldn't get paid as much. It'd be much better for women to go back and, be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. Yeah. You still see people giving that resistance to anything that you see is a progress for women itself. Military leadership would be one, running for political office. You see that moment where if a woman is going to be elevated into a position above a man, that's when the men start to question everything about, one, the credentials, and then two, whether or not they can handle it based off of their gender.
Coming back to the final scene really fast. I just, I know I mentioned this to you in our conversations leading up to this, but I'm still so angry about the last line of this film. Just after everything she goes through, after he's dead, she's still just Jack's wife.
Yeah.
And oh my God. And I can't tell what the thought behind this line is. Like, is it supposed to make me feel what I felt, which was anger that that's the only way she's seen after all of this? Or was it just the 70s and that's just how it works? But like, it feels like it's supposed to be powerful in some way because it was the title of the film. It was the final line, like you don't end it on a throwaway thing. So
I think you nailed it though, right? That she says she's a witch. She looks all hot. She has a new hairdo, she's a hot new widow. She's all excited about her new status as a witch. She's bragging about it to people. People are telling her how good she looks. But even after all of that, the only thing she's defined by is the husband who's not even around anymore. Because her face is not happy at the end.
No, not at all. No.
So we got to look at that. But I think you read it as he intended it. I think that with all the people who wanted different things from this film, I feel like he scored the last point for himself. That's what he wanted it to be.
Yeah.
If it would have ended with her being, lightly whipped on her hands and knees, naked by the cat o' nine tails, I'd be like, okay, the people who wanted it to be sexy won, But that we get her sort of crestfallen expression at the end. I'm like, there it is. You're still just Jack's wife.
Damn.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's what I took from it, but I also didn't want that to be the answer.
Yeah. No, I get it. But her performance, so much of what should have been powerful was sort of robbed of its power by the melodrama. Mm-hmm. I can't take it seriously if people, go from small talk to screaming in 40 seconds. But I thought that the simmering rage we see throughout the film in her is one of its strongest points. It's one of the only thing that's done with like subtlety. It's like nothing in this film is subtle for all of its confusion, nothing is really subtle. But we do get this kind of character arc that is, it's not all the stuff, it's not all the dumb shit she talks to Greg about, but it's like the loosening up of her hair and clothing. Although she has that weird makeup at the end, and even Greg is like, what the hell is going on with your face? When she like draws, I don't know, like an extra eyelid on. It's weird. But her clothing changes throughout the film to, I guess, be more witchy, more new agey. But like her dead-eye stares throughout the film, I think, do so much more than like the sobbing of all the characters. She has like this icy stare in so many of the scenes that I think is really effective.
Oh, yeah.
See, I'm sitting here processing all of it.
You can't, Don, because I've been trying for weeks to process this film. And it doesn't work.
It's like Pontypool, Don. Once you understand it, then bad things happen. So
we're all going to be haunted by this film tonight in our dreams.
Well, especially because you're going to force me to watch it again.
I'm
and
sorry.
Then I'm going to have more questions, and it's just going to keep growing. And
it's because I'm a teacher. I like suck the fun out of things because I'm like, no, let's research every tiny bit of it.
Oh, this is not sucking the fun out of it for me at all. It's quite the opposite. It's I just know myself, and I'm going to become obsessed and want answers that don't exist. So, or at least that aren't available.
But you watch it again and again, and you start noticing all of these little things, and you're like, should I imbue that with any significance? or is this just a fucking low budget movie? Because there's that scene where we have like a realtor leading Joan through her house and leading her through her life, telling her all of the comfortable amenities she has as a suburban wife. And she's sort of following, like, she's doing her dead eye stare thing that's so good. The guy who is the realtor, I believe, is also the actor who may or may not be Larry, the fucking mysterious Larry, whoever it was who got up at the party to read the dirty Mad Libs. is the same guy as the realtor. So it's like, ooh, is there significance there? Or did they just like not have another actor? That's very possible.
Maybe Larry is the guy in the mask. Maybe that's...
Maybe that is Larry. Like, damn, Larry, you had this whole dark side. You know, we didn't know about it.
Damn
Greg's
Larry.
at the door in that scene. And they called, didn't they call him a handyman or something in that scene? The sort of dream sequence where she's being led around by the realtor. Greg's at the back door and he's like, oh, this is your handyman. He'll fix what's broken, blah, blah, blah. And then so interesting. I actually don't have this in my notes. How dare I leave that out?
They really should have gone for a plumber. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, they should have gone for a plumber. Or like a cable guy.
You can both hit me for that one. That's fine.
I don't. I'm going to give it to you. That's a good one. When she meets Greg for the first time, she's like, haven't we met before? Because he was in her dream before she met him. And then they were like, oh, but was it a community service thing? But you can see on her face that that's not it. So in addition to the shaking teapot, I would say that might be the only other supernatural maybe that we get.
Well, I mean, Greg is out servicing the entire community. But, you know, I thought a really good thing with Greg, I'm just all over the place here, but I would have really liked if after she had sex with Greg, if she was like, that's it. Like, just destroy his fucking ego right there. Yeah. That would have really made it for me. I guess this is why you date 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
You know, like something like that. That would have been great.
Mm-hmm. Or like, my daughter can have you back. That'd have been pretty funny. Nikki will be home tomorrow from Buffalo. I'll tell her to call you. You should absolutely cut this off. This is just stuff that I found that I was like, ooh, that's interesting.
No, we're gonna do it.
The TV show Bewitched ended. It was either the year before Season of the Witch. It was right before this movie came out. So people were already familiar with the idea of the neighborhood witch. But it was totally opposite, right? Because Samantha hid her powers to have a normal life where Joan craves power to escape her normal life. So that was interesting, I thought. And also the novel The Stepford Wives, R11, came out at about the same time as this movie. So again, like another critique of suburbia and what women are supposed to do. So like there was a lot of interesting things happening at this time. Like it was late 60s, early 70s. Man, was there upheaval. MLK Jr. being assassinated, the moon landing, Woodstock, Beatles disbanding, Vietnam conflict with massive protests, Kent State Massacre. The voting age was lowered from 21 to 18 in 71. 72 brought Watergate. And there were huge environmental concerns like the Alaska oil pipeline bill that passed in 73. And of course, we also mentioned Roe v. Wade in 73. So like this was a wild backdrop for any film. You know, there's no way it couldn't have leaked in, even had, and obviously Romero wanted it to. But, you know, looking at all of that and then watching this movie and thinking about a woman who is just sort of within her same four walls and her only entertainment is playing cards with her annoying neighbors. Like, of course, you would not consent to do that for much longer.
Yeah, definitely. You know, you said that Greg was the only choice out there, and I feel like her friends are the only choice out there too. Like,
that's true.
She doesn't seem to like overly like them. Like, it's just, this is the only choice I have for people to hang out with.
Yeah, it's you or the witches I'm going to get naked with. Like, and I know that Romero would be like, if he were right here, he'd be like, Rebecca, what's your obsession with hating Greg? You know, and I get that.
Everything
about him. But, you know, he was just not her husband. And I get that is his chief appeal, right? That he's just not her husband. So anyone would have been better than that, you know? I still think, though, that they could have done better. Even if they were like
absolutely agree.
shopping for the character in craft services, they could have done better. There was some hot camera guy. There was some custodian on set, you know, who would have killed that role.
I don't know why that's so hilarious to me, but it is. I just picture them walking into catering and being like, "You there? Come along."
Now, like, do I get paid more than? No, you don't. Just come here. Put on this hat and take your shirt off. That's how that would go. You're still making minimum wage, which was, you know, what was it, like $1? You get $1 an hour. Have pretend sex with this stand-in who is not actually Jan White.
Maybe they found the stand-in in craft services as well.
Maybe. They might have. You know, I think you take what you can get when you've got $100,000 budget, even for 1973.
That's so crazy. I can't even imagine.
It is. And he got a lot of criticism for this movie, you know, people didn't love it. And he, like, there are quotes of him out there that are like, I had $100,000. What did you want me to do? Like, he understood his limitations, you know, and he was like pointing out the practical hurdles that he had in making this film, which is fair.
He's making more movies than I am right this second. So,
well,
I mean, I am now.
Right.
Yes.
And it's not like I can't like really criticize him, right? I'm criticizing this movie. I'm critiquing it. I'm critiquing and appreciating this movie for all of the thoughts it's giving me.
And we're pushing people to go see it, so he'd be excited.
We are pushing. It's on Shudder, everybody. You can get this on Shudder.
That's right.
Also, this is the weirdest thing that I think I researched in all of this, because I got stuck on the Pittsburgh to Buffalo police operation, you know? And I was like, wait, when was the interstate highway system built? And so I looked it up.
Ooh.
And it was built in the late 50s with construction going into the early 60s. So it was 3.5 hours. That's it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
But what was the posted speed limit at the time?
That I didn't look up. It was probably like 32. It was like, just, you know, nobody go above 32. It's dangerous.
Well, if you ever find a reason to make the trek from Pittsburgh to Buffalo, you should just remind yourself, hey, I'm making the same trip that these guys made.
That these high-paid, lifelong police detectives, you know, they've really worked their way up. They had nothing better to do than investigate a 19-year-old who was a fucking legal adult who packed a bag because she got mad at her mom for listening to her have sex. Which by the way, was a little unfair. Like, it's your mom's house.
Yeah. You
didn't want her to come home, but she did, okay? Like, you could have had uncomfortable sex in the back of Greg's Beetle. You chose not to, Nikki.
Was it a Volkswagen?
It was.
It was. It really was. Yeah. Which Greg brazenly parked in front of the house again and again. That Greg, he's such a rascal. He's a rebel. He don't care.
They should have had a scene where he's like, I don't have to compensate for anything. So that seems very in line with Greg. So
I can have sex with any 19-year-old I want, and maybe somebody who's 39 or 40, but I don't go past 42. So tell your friends not to call me.
Oh man.
I almost feel bad for ragging on good old Raymond Lane. I'm sorry, sir. I don't even know if he's dead or not.
This is not his fault the character's written this way. So
no, but like
we're just talking about Greg, not him.
I called his face trollish. That was not nice. So,
well, anyone who's seen it would agree. So
if he's still with us, I hope he'll forgive me if he hears this.
And if he's
he will not
rolling in his grave
dead for 22 years.
He's what now?
No, I said he will not get over it. It's been 22 years. He's dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, he looks 45, but Lane was 36. It is unclear why Nikki is attracted to him. What does she see in him, etc. Trollish and unattractive, obnoxious and argumentative. He's gross in so many ways.
Oh my God.
That's just from my notes. That's just from my notes. Sorry, Raymond Lane. You shouldn't put any of this in. People are going to think I'm terrible.
No.
No.
People are going to be like, you need to bring her back.
I'm going to be like, she is shallow, but damn, does she research. That's going to be my reputation.
Put it on your CV.
I'm gonna.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's all that I've got. I've gone through 3,000 words plus of notes.
That's amazing. I had like 4 words of notes. So
yeah. I have sources listed, but I don't think people need all of those.
No, mine are spent.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. I guess that leads us into movie recs. Oh yeah.
Well, we should warn folks that like this is not the new season of The Witch. Like this is not Nick Cage.
2015 or whatever that was.
Yeah. This is not that one, because you try to look it up and you're like, ooh, not the right one.
I just kept adding 1972 to it whenever I had to look it up. So yeah. It helped.
And there's a Jan White who is a football player who I kept getting. Yes. That was frustrating as well. For a second, I thought Raymond Lane did not exist because his name was spelled wrong in an article. And I was like, oh no, where is he missing too? Just like Larry? Then I found him.
Everybody disappears. That's why you can't find ages. You can't find any of these people. It's crazy.
Because Joan did away with all of them when she was done with them. Used them up.
That's the only answer.
Mm-hmm.
Really fast, I just want to go back to one scene because I thought I was done, but I'm not.
The listeners are going to be like, I thought you all were done.
My buddy Ian's just going to be like, just stop already. No, when she shoots her husband, the scene right before that, where he's talking to his coworker, like there's even this piece where like his coworker, boss, whatever he is, he's like, you've earned enough money for the company. Take the day off and spend it with your family. And the look that Jack gives him is like, oh my God, don't make me spend time with my family. Right. Mm-hmm. And I love that no matter what scene he was in, this guy was just the dickhead that they all hated. I know. And then they're just fine with Greg running around.
He's almost like a cartoon, like Jack is so bad that he's like this cartoon. He's, he hits her. He's
yelling on the phone.
Always yelling. He doesn't let her speak when people are like, when the detectives are there, he's the one talking, and then he yells at her afterward, and it's just the worst in every scene. But you know what I'm going to make up in my head that there's no evidence for at all? To humanize Jack. I'm going to say that maybe he and that man were in a relationship together, and that's why he was having such a hard time leading his domestic life with Joan.
It would not be the furthest thing from reality.
Right? Like maybe. Because they were always going off on work trips together. So, could be.
It's canon. It's canon.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Mm-hmm. All right. So
one of the many suppositions that there is no evidence for that I have said on this podcast.
There's no evidence for anything because nothing exists anymore. So we get to just decide whatever we want. It's great.
Especially because we don't know where these actors are now. They can't argue with us. They can't be like, that wasn't in the script. Like, we don't even know that you exist. So
we don't even know if there was a script.
We don't know if there was one. We're all just making it up. You're all improv actors.
All right. So I suppose that brings us to the movie Rex. So if people liked this, what else? Or if people found it important, because it's not good. No. If people liked this, what else should they watch? And Rebecca, you get to go first because you're the guest.
I thought it would be an interesting pairing to watch The Craft after this.
Oh.
Because, we get, instead of an unfulfilled housewife, we get unfulfilled teen girls, but we still have all of those ideas of what they are supposed to be and what they do and don't want to be, and rebelling and thinking about how they fit in, and seeing, Craft was something like 96. I'm not positive, but it was in the 90s. And seeing those two movies about 20 years apart, I think they might talk to each other in some cool ways.
I like that. All right. I always do a double feature. My double feature for this one is Jacob's Wife, because it has a lot of the similar crazy things going on. I don't want to overly ruin that film if people haven't seen it, but it's also, obviously the Jacob's wife connection there. And it insults preachers in a way. So, I'm down with it. But yeah, I think that would be a great film to watch with this. And I think it explores a lot of the same themes, as well as just kind of giving an updated version, and maybe what we would have gotten with a more cohesive film made a little later.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Don, 38 films. What do you got?
Oh, we're getting lower on the numbers now. Obviously, I'm going to go with Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, The Witches. I've included Creepshow, The Exorcist 1 and 2, Suspiria, James's favorite movie, The Witch, Stepford Wives. We've mentioned during the discussion, but The Wicker Man, Hereditary, Rosemary's Baby. And just because I saw a couple of things that kind of reminded me of this film, Society. But I guess there's more than a couple of things. There were a few.
Imagine if the witch part of this just rolled into Society at the end. That would be crazy. It'd be so great. The shunting just takes place here too. Well, cool. All right. So, Rebecca, that brings it back to you. You want to tell people where they can find you on social and purchase books and anthologies and anything else you want to do?
Oh, sure. So you can find me on Twitter at Rebecca J. Cuth. I'm on Facebook, just my plain old boring name. Just look up Rebecca Cuthbert. RebeccaCuthbert.com is my website where you can see all of my recent publications. And I am on social media way too much, so you will find me there about every day. Oh, and my book is on Amazon, and then there's a link from my website as well.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. Very cool. All right. Well, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely.
I enjoyed this film so much more than I thought I would. And I know I jokingly said I don't want to have to watch it again, but I will, because I think it's hilarious and awesome. And I love your "it's not good, but it's important." And I'll be sending you questions in the future.
Do and I won't say that I necessarily enjoyed the film, but I really enjoyed talking about it with you, and I enjoyed researching the shit out of it. I gotta know, when you research, is it at 3 a.m. when it wakes you up and you just you grab your phone and look up something crazy about it? No, I don't, but I will remember in the morning what was bothering me, So one night I woke up and I was like, I have got to think more about that cat, What the fuck was that cat doing there? Why was this woman leaving the basement window open?
Yeah. So the cat could get in.
Exactly. Yeah. And wouldn't it be so funny if it just was her pet cat? If there was no significance to it at all.
A cat wandered into the scene when they were filming and they were like, no, the budget doesn't let us cut that.
Yeah.
You know,
They're like, we've showed off the creepy lamps too much. We'll just put the cat in now.
the lamps are what I keep thinking about. I'm just like, did this go somewhere? Was it just like those are cool? I don't know. But yeah.
I don't know. Now you're making me want to watch it again. And do I have the fortitude for one more go round? I don't know.
All right. Well, before you do that, we will let you go. Thank you so much for being here today.
All right. I had so much fun. Thank you both.
No, thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So that wraps up another week. As always, I am James Sabata.
And I'm Don Guillory.
And we will see you back here at thenecronomid.com.